Analysis on this as we go to Pretoria. Gareth Newham is on the line from the Institute for Security Studies, who I'm sure has been following this with a great deal of interest. Is it common cause, Gareth, and good afternoon to you and welcome, that in the past couple of weeks we have really seen a dramatic spike?
It certainly seems to be the case. It appears to be a situation in which almost every day we're getting news of yet another cash-in-transit heist. And that is very worrying. It means that these highly organized groups of people who spend quite a bit of time planning their crimes and are usually career criminals, have committed many crimes before they get involved in this kind of specialized crime, are running amok. They're simply not being dealt with, they're not being prevented, and now they're getting to a point where they are believing they can act with impunity and are committing more and more of these crimes. So it's a very worrying development.
When you talk about well-planned and well-orchestrated, it was also interesting to hear a police representative telling us earlier that there's also a belief within police circles that many of these gangs are linked and possibly even centrally coordinated.
That very well might be, but you know, from the research that we are aware of that's come out of the last few years, where people convicted of these crimes have been interviewed and quite a lot of detailed work has been undertaken, it would be quite difficult to have one group sort of coordinating it. Typically, the people who are involved in a particular hit are only the ones involved. In other words, you don't tell people outside of this that you're doing this, and it's difficult to control people who are involved in a hit from a centrally located place. It's typically because you don't want information to get to the police, crime intelligence and other structures about these hits so that you can be prevented or caught later. So if there's a group of 8 or even 15 or sometimes as many as 20, each one of those individuals has been chosen for that specific hit, and usually the person who's coordinating it is part of it. And knows each of the persons there, and of course they all then share in the spoils, and they all know how much money that's being grabbed because they're all very part of it. If you're sitting elsewhere, you have no idea how much money was taken. So look, unless there's very hard evidence that this is being centrally orchestrated, I would still go that these are maybe loosely orchestrated groups that might be forming quite quickly to hit more and more targets, rather than that there's some hidden hand at a higher level.
Is there enough crime intelligence in this respect, do you think?
Well, what we've seen for a number of years now, for the last decade at least, is the profound deterioration of crime intelligence because of the whole saga around Lieutenant General Richard Ndluli, who was irregularly appointed into that post in 2009, and only after a meeting with various cabinet ministers, and as most of us know who followed this, was involved in, or certainly facing serious allegations, enough to have 2 separate criminal trials start against him, one for violent crime involving kidnapping, defeating the edge of justice, but more importantly for corruption, where very good, hardworking, dedicated, honest crime intelligence people were forced out, and we saw people such as Captain KGB Chabalala, who was a convicted armed robber, being recruited into crime intelligence, and it's been reported that he's been linked to at least 7 or 8 cash-in-transit heists while he was working in crime intelligence. So what we saw is good people being forced out at a senior level, and people involved in organized crime starting to take over components of crime intelligence and using their police resources and capacity not to fight crime but to commit crime. And in that situation, our crime intelligence has become largely dysfunctional nationally. There are good people in crime intelligence in certain localities. It's a very big component. There's about 9,000 people working in it. It's got a budget of $3.5 billion. But certainly when your senior echelon are not doing what they should be doing, and the people at the top of crime intelligence are not the right people, then that entire capacity becomes dysfunctional and doesn't work properly. So over the last decade, this has happened, and that means that we don't have the support in terms of the crime intelligence we need to identify what are relatively small numbers of people committing a vast majority of the cash-in-transit heists.
All right, Gareth Newham from the Institute for Security Studies. Time, unfortunately, is against us. We'll leave it there, but thank you very much for the assessment.